What are we explaining? How we got together?
How
or?
you got together?
Go for it. You go first.
So,
Or even actually, how life looked before you got together.
okay, that's good. So for me, I'd been a Christian for 4 years, I think, before we got together. And I came into Christianity very broken, head down, weeping all the time. Really, there was a lot for God to do in me, a lot of breaking down and a lot of rebuilding. And one of the first things I said to Lord is, I don't want to date. I don't want to date. I've done all that out there. I don't want to date. It's just me and you, Lord. And then 4 years on, I'm like, Lord, I know I said that, but okay, now I think maybe somebody, you know.
Yeah.
And so the Lord set me on a path of preparing to be a wife. He actually said to me, be a wife before you're a wife.
Wow.
And I thought, what on earth does that mean? How do I do that? And I naturally, in my flesh, thought, okay, I need to cook better, clean better, all of that kind of stuff, which I thought I was doing okay on those.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I was living alone, so I only
Yeah.
had me to take care of.
Okay.
But, you know, I was cooking and I was tidying, and I thought, what
Right.
more can I do, Lord? I didn't get it.
Yeah.
But as I continued to seek the Lord and ask more questions, what I realized is the Lord was showing me that if I can be a wife to him first, then he can give me an earthly husband.
Wow.
And he took me to Isaiah 54, I think it is, where it talks about your maker is your husband. And when I heard that, I felt like the Lord was saying, you're not going to have an earthly husband. You're going to be married to me. You're like a nun, you know, and that's going to be it.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, I don't like the sound of this, you know. But as time went on, I realized that what the Lord was saying is, if you can communicate with me first, you're more likely to have a successful marriage and being able to communicate with the person I'm going to give you.
Right.
If you can obey me, if you can turn to me, if you can commit to me, if you can, you know, through the rough and the smooth, you're still loyal to me, then, you know, because my plan before Christianity was, I'll get married, I'll have kids, and he will cheat.
Yeah.
Not if, he will cheat, and then I will raise my kids alone.
Right.
So my solution was to run. So I think what the Lord was saying, now let me get you ready for the stuff that marriage is about, like what it contains, so that you don't run.
Right.
You stick with it, you see it out, and I'm going to use you. But I didn't know all this at the time.
Yeah.
So I started to prepare, and then an auntie in the church came to me and said, the Lord has told me to pray and fast with you regarding your husband. And I thought, okay, all right, I don't know what you mean. What does this look like, you know? And she said, no, one day a month. We'll choose one set day a month, and we will set that day aside to pray and fast concerning your husband. I said, great, let's do it. And I did that for 3 years. 3 years.
It's so crazy because even the time alone, you're going to need that in your marriage to learn how to go back to God when things are going, you know, not so to plan, or if you're having any kind of issues or what have you. And then when the auntie came to you, I would imagine you thought, okay, cool, that means he's on the way.
Yeah.
A few months down the line, 3 years later.
3 years. 3 years. But in those 3 years, as I continued to pray, and I didn't only pray for my husband on the days that we were fasting, I was praying all the time, you know.
Right.
But I felt like I got to know him. And then God was using me as the helper to intercede for him, to stand in the gap for him, to tear down when I needed to. And I remember praying a specific prayer one day, Lord, if there's anyone or anything that's standing in the way of me and my husband, I remove it now in the name of Jesus.
Wow.
And there was something, but I didn't know that until I met Rob, and he started to tell me about his journey. I was like, oh my gosh, that was around the time I was praying, you know?
That is
And so God was
amazing.
really preparing me. But what that meant was that by the time I met him, it was fast. So where I had a 5-year plan, God had a quicker plan.
How quick is quick?
Well, within 2 weeks of talking, we were like, we're going to be husband and wife. And 11 months later, we got married. And if you had told me that, I would have said, never going to happen. Never going to happen.
So you were together 11 months and you've been married for
20 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
So in that time of like fasting and praying with the church auntie, how did you feel like, what do you feel like your preparation looked like outside of warfaring for, you know, your husband? Like, how do you feel that cultivated you as Sonia?
Yeah.
You know?
A lot of changes. A lot of changes. attitude had to shift.
Right.
My perspective had to shift. I had to gain an understanding of what submission to the Lord first looked like, and then be prepared for submission for my husband, having full understanding of what that is. I came from divorced parent, ugly divorce, horrible, that kind of thing. And all of my views on relationships had to change. Everything had to shift. And God had to do a real stripping away of me, like a reset, a complete reset, for me to be able to bring, because whilst you're praying, remember that the person that God is bringing also is being prepared. And so God's timing is perfect. It's often not our timing. So in that time, God had to get me ready, because I didn't like, if Rob had approached me and said, like, you're going to be my wife, I'd heard that before. I'd heard that before. Do you know what I mean? From men who I didn't even like, much less.
You heard it more than once.
More than once, a few
times, yeah.
Couple of times.
But
I get it.
Do you know
hot
what I'm saying?
stuff.
So that didn't have me all fluffy and wobbly, like, someone wants to marry me. So if Rob had come from the same place, again, I would have been like, yeah, whatever. And there were certain obstacles that in the flesh, in the ordinary, I would have not accepted Rob. I would have pushed him away because of circumstances, even his appearance.
Rob's like, what's wrong with me?
What's wrong with me?
He didn't look like he does now.
Oh, no? Okay.
No.
That small refinement.
But honestly, the gold tooth, I would have run a mile from that. Like, which roadman? I'm like, no way, not happening. But by the time God had dealt with me, all I saw was what was in his heart. I didn't necessarily look at the exterior. It was more like, this guy, regardless of the circumstances and what he's got going on, his heart is for God. He's got such a heart for God. Even when he's not getting it right, when I'm not getting it right, but his heart for God, you can't question that. And that opened me up to, okay, we're on a journey now.
Woo. Rob, what about you? No, do you know why? Because even, I don't know if you've seen some of those kind of like, I mean, this is very social media-esque, what I'm about to say, but there's like all this thing about the prayer of a wife. So there was one with Sierra's prayer and who else? There's been a few women that are quite well known, quite established, and there's this prayer like, what did you pray? What did you pray for your husband? But actually, it's bigger than just the prayer. It's all the work that you have to do whilst you're praying, whilst you're preparing, whilst you're kind of journeying on this faith walk, And I just feel like every time I hear your story, in fact, I actually learn something new every single time. I've read your book, we've spoken, but every single time something hits me differently, And I'm just, it's just amazing. It really is amazing.